The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this episode are that of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the values of sponsors or other associated organizations. Welcome to the Parental Compass by Family Education and Support Services. I am your host, Bobby Williams. As always, if you like the show, subscribe to the show. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, whatever Google's thing is, subscribe. It means a lot to us. When your child is having a tough time in school, especially in regards to discipline, it can be a tough place. Oftentimes you can fall into this us and them mentality, and there's power dynamics there. Well, today we are talking about how you can have a collaborative relationship with the school. Our guest today is Matt Gale from Treehouse. If you don't know, Treehouse is an education advocacy group for youth in foster care. I worked with them extensively when I was a foster care case manager, and they do incredible work. Let's check out the conversation.
Unfortunately, a really common interaction that can happen is if you're already coming in with the idea that something's wrong, then the whole conversation is going to be based on a problem, right? Rather than all the things that could be going right or how to make things right. So I can definitely see how, it's an intimidating situation to come into, right? Because it's like you feel like you're coming in with a decision that's kind of already been made, or that someone's already coming just to tell you something rather than having a collaborative conversation about how to stop it from happening again or just how to make things better.
And there's kind of a power dynamic of your kid has to be at the school. The school has this whole infrastructure of all these teachers and staff, and then you're one parent in the community.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're prepared, right? And so that's something that they do all the time. They've had training for it. They have colleagues around them. They may have superiors or bosses that they can go to when they have questions. And parents don't really always have that resource, right? It's you going into their environment, into their school, and having a conversation that maybe they're organized. And so the power dynamic can be huge.
Well, so how do you even start to get a dialogue going? Do you just show up and say, I want to talk to the counselor? Or what's step one in forming this relationship?
If it's a conversation around discipline, then I would hope that that's not the first conversation that's happened, that maybe at the beginning of enrollment or as your student is interacting with more and more people at school, getting to know their teachers, you can develop some of those more day-to-day relationships. Discipline doesn't normally involve the day-to-day people, right? Like that's when you start having principals come in or associate principals, assistant principals. But if you have teachers involved, maybe the school counselor is definitely going to be a really big part of your interactions at the school. But it could be anything from like a coach, a teacher, just anyone that maybe the student has a positive relationship with as well, or just someone that you feel supported by or comfortable with at the school. And that can give you a bit more of a foot in the door, I guess.
In my work with schools, I do like a lot of songwriting workshops with schools, and sometimes I don't know who to go to. But I'm like, okay, this one person at the school is my friend, and they'll know who to go to, and they'll answer my call. So I'll hit up the one person I've worked with, and that's like my in.
I always start with, asking the student, like, who do you like at school, right? Who do you get along with? Because like we all spend more time with the people that we like. So if the student has even one connection, one person that they're willing to go to when they have a question or when they're not feeling good about something, that person is like, you really got to jump on that, right? And really use that relationship and make sure they're involved so that the student and the family have as many positive supports as they can around them. The more the better, right? But sometimes just having one person that's on your side can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think that's really true too. That's something I talk about. Like having one caring adult at school can change the whole experience.
Hmm. And that's the thing. A lot of the kids I work with, a lot of the youth I work with will, they'll have favorite classes and they'll have favorite teachers, and so they will spend more time in those classes.
I
And so,
guess the challenging part in working with schools is how can you reframe, like schools are into discipline, at least a lot of schools. It's like you misbehave, you get suspended, or you're in trouble. And how can you change it from a you're in trouble conversation to this is a child that is going through a tough time and needs support? Like how can you start to get them to reframe it a little?
building awareness and just having more opportunity to have those types of conversations. Like there's a cultural aspect there, and there's like a learning background as well, right? Like, so with Treehouse and my job, we really try and come in with like a trauma informed lens and realize that people go through different things in their lives that can affect how they act, how they feel, all these different things, their relationships with others. And so if you don't take those into account, then you really don't give someone enough credit. Like, you really need to take a step back from that and think, like, why is this an issue? What's going on? And just talking to the youth, like, what's going on? Like,
Yeah, like the behavior isn't the issue necessarily. It's a symptom of whatever the real issue is.
exactly, exactly. It's pretty human to, have reactions to when things aren't going well. But there's a whole nother layer to it when like things have not been going well for a long time, or there's something really significant. The way you think, the way you feel, like your ability to learn or just understand what people are trying to express to you is going to be completely different depending on where you're at and where that process is at with you. So if you're not going into a conversation with a youth or a family with that in mind, you're really not giving them a chance
Mhm.
to express what they need.
On the school side, I could see sometimes schools just get burnout, and it's tough to feel compassionate for someone who's really rude to you every day, you know. But they're professionals. I guess they got to figure that out too.
And yeah, it's like, I mean, it's tough, right? When you have a bad interaction, or you feel like someone just doesn't want anything to do with you, or maybe they're swearing at you, or maybe there's just like there's like an actual problem. Burnout, yeah, burnout's huge, and like full credit to teachers that have to work with that every day, because it's not easy. No matter what you do, no matter what you've learned, or where you come from, like, it doesn't feel good to have like bad interactions or people that are really struggling to be around you. So, um, you know, having that empathy can be difficult, but I think it's the key, right? Having empathy and understanding, or even just acknowledging that maybe you don't understand. Um, it's just opening that dialogue, right?
Yeah, just getting that conversation going. Well, and sometimes you, as a parent, maybe you don't like the teacher. You're just like, oh, this teacher is just a jerk.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, sometimes relationships don't work, right? I mean, as much as you can try, there, I think most students have teachers that they don't get along with. Most people have someone that they don't always get along with. That's just human nature. We learn about each other and we learn about ourselves that way. Um, I will say, I'm coming from a professional point of view rather than a parental one. So it's definitely a different relationship that I experience because I'm coming from that professional side of things. So with a parent, it's going to be different as well because, as you mentioned before, there's that power dynamic. Um, but the more interactions you have with someone, the more you get to know them. You can generalize and be like, yeah, that person's a jerk, but like maybe just that one day something's going on or there's something behind them. And that's the same lens we have to look at with the families and the youth, right? It's like we have to get to know each other better because normally, as people get to know each other better, they can make it work. Even if they're not going to get along, they're not going to hang out every weekend, they can still get the jobs done, right?
Hmm. It's tough to demonize someone that you're talking to and around all the time or often.
Exactly, exactly. Once you kind of humanize someone, right? Once
Yeah.
you know that they're just a person like you.
One thing I'm a little conflicted on is, do you carry the consequence from a school into home? Like if they got in trouble at school, are they also in trouble at home? Because sometimes it's like, well, home is home, school is school.
Mhm.
It's just a tough one. What's your philosophy on all that?
That's a really good question. Um, Especially with the field I work with, because I work specifically with youth in foster care. The home can change, and the relationship with their caregivers can change. Even sometimes the school, depending on if they have to move. Um, so I think it comes back to like what's working for the youth. What does the youth think? Because that's the constant, no matter what. The youth is going to be the one that knows, the expert of their own lives, if you're going to go with that phrase. But they're going to know if something's working or not working, and you're going to be able to see by talking to others. So if you're a caregiver and the school comes to you and says, hey, I think you need to do this, then you come back and say, well, how's that going for you at school? And they say, well, I think we just need to do more of it, and then eventually it's going to pay off. So maybe we need to do something else, though. Maybe something else will work a little better rather than just trying to double down on whatever we think will work.
I hear what you're saying of it's like a collaborative, like this is what works for us at home. Like when we do this, they kind of mellow out. This
Uh-huh.
is what you could try at school or vice versa and like share ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, schools and teachers and staff have a lot of experience because they work with so many youth, and it's so many different opportunities to learn about what works and what doesn't work. But everyone's different, right? Every youth is different. Every home is different, and so like you do have to start with the youth and the family, and you work with what you've got, right? There are studies out there that you can use evidence-based practice to determine what's going to work and what's not, but you also need to have conversation about whether this is going to work specifically and for this youth and this actual situation. And so sometimes the home has the right idea, sometimes the caregivers or the parents have the best idea that they can give to the school. um, and it's not always about the school determining what's best. It's about determining together what's going to work.
So walk me through this. Say you're called into school as a parent for a meeting with either a teacher or counselor, vice principal, or whatever. They
Mm-hmm.
tell you your child is just wandering through the hallways, they're disrespectful. Um, you need to know about this.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the conversation go from there? Like, walk us through what would happen and what does success look like?
I would hope the youth is in the room, and then you can just like maybe it's a conversation you have one on one with them, because having a room full of people talking about a problem can be very kind of isolating and
Hmm.
make someone feel very good or very empowered. But like it's obviously an indicator that there's a problem, or that there's something that you can work on to try and increase their attendance or help them feel more comfortable at going to class, whatever the issue is. Because maybe it's they don't like a teacher, maybe they're being bullied in class, maybe they don't understand what's going on in terms of what they're learning, so they just don't want to go to class anymore. You don't know until you ask them, right? So you ask the youth, what's going on with you? What do you need? And maybe they know, maybe they don't know. You can give them some options, but it always comes back down to having a conversation, figuring out what the underlying issue could be, and figuring out what's going to help. It doesn't necessarily mean like attendance is going to skyrocket the next day and everything's going to be okay, but you're you're just providing support, right? Rather than having this expectation that things need to be this way, and if it's not, it's bad and you're going to get in trouble. It's We would like for things to be better for you so that you can learn and understand and feel supported. What do you need for that to happen?
I think the issue is sometimes schools are just their own culture and they have their own ways of doing things, and it's hard to infiltrate. And
Mhm.
sometimes you can get into a real strong us and them mentality,
Yeah.
and it's just hard to break through. And then it's like, then what do you do? Do you like let me see your policies and procedures book and I'll come through this? And
Yeah.
how do you advocate for yourself and your child when you don't feel like you're getting what you want or need out of the school?
Like they all are part of the state, right? The state has policies, the federal government have policies, and so there are foundations to build from that. There are boundaries of what can and can't be done. And so you work within those and you be like, well, is this appropriate? Is this actually something that you're allowed to do? Or is this something that is just a school thing? Like, is this a policy thing that is around the state, or is this just a school thing? And that can be really challenging. If it's a school thing or it's the viewpoint with trying to advocate, I think, obviously write things down as much as you can. Always have someone with you, especially with the youth, because that power dynamic is even more so with a youth, right? Because you're a student and a teacher. I mean, it's one thing if you're a parent with a teacher or a parent with a principal, but to be a student is another thing. So have someone or a group of people with you that can make you feel empowered to speak what you need, say what you need to say.
I like the idea of bringing a team with you, and it probably doesn't even necessarily need to be a family member. It could be like this is their coach outside of school, or this is an important family friend, or whatever. But probably if you came in with 3 people, that feels a lot different than just coming in with 1.
Yeah, exactly. Or being by yourself. And so, I mean, my experience with schools have been pretty positive in the sense that normally there are quite a lot of people around in the meetings, and they're all there to try and support the youth in their own way. Sometimes some people do rely more on discipline, and some people rely more on dialogue. But it's important to make sure that the person that is being talked about feels that they are supported to do a lot of the talking as well.
My big takeaways from this are be present at the school, not just when a child's in trouble, but whenever you can be there. Find your allies, figure out what's working and focus on that, focus on like a good connection or something positive, and try to have the youth contribute as much as they can.
Yeah, I think if I was to take one takeaway, having the youth contribute as much as they can would be definitely the starting point, and then having people around to provide that support. Definitely, I think that's a pretty fair summary.
I've appreciated working with Treehouse over the years. It's like whenever I was really kind of having a tough time with the school, having a Treehouse advocate always made such a big difference. And so I really appreciate your work, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here with me this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate your time too. And I just want to say, if there are people that do feel like they need extra advocacy, always talk to your schools, your districts, places like Treehouse. There's the Education Ombudsman. Reach out, make sure you're supported.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Treehouse. Keep fighting the good fight. This has been the Parental Compass by Family Education and Support Services. I'm Bobby Williams. We'll see you next week. Peace.